Now hold on, before you say, oh no, not another talking video twice in a row, this one has more guns in it, I promise. Right, so this week I thought I'd run through the fighting kit that I took to the latest descent milsim hosted at Gunman's newest site, which is Battle Lakes. Now before we dive on into that, I'd just like to quickly say, if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing and dropping a like and a comment down below. Others have been pointing out recently, YouTube and Facebook are getting quite anti-gun at the moment and really trying to squash this content. But every like, comment and even share if you want to do that, I'm not forcing you, really does help get the content out there and help more people see it and help the channel grow. Right, with that out of the way, and I really do feel dirty whoring myself out like that, let's get on into the kit that I took. Now yes, I know sitting here and talking to you and just showing you bits and pieces would be really boring, so I shot some B-roll. So let's go straight on over into me in the garden and talk through it. So here we see me in my base layer. Now I do know base layer would be underwear and socks. I'm not going to show you me in my underwear and socks, I'm not that desperate yet. But I would recommend taking a comfy pair of both, because you're going to be wearing them for quite a while, and really you don't want to have bad basics because you're just going to have a bad time. So a decent pair of hiking socks and some nice comfy underwear, preferably with only 3 holes in it, will be fine. Now I complemented that basics with a nice olive t-shirt. Here I'm wearing a Star Wars one, but I'm pretty sure I was wearing a Land Rover one at the time. And then I chucked on some DDPM trousers. And then boots wise, I was wearing some Magnums that I have. They did start falling apart a bit, so I see new boots on the horizon, and maybe I'm going to spend a bit more so I have some nice solid ones that will last a while. Now, the most important part of your kit is going to be your safety protection, and so here I'm going to put on my ESS yellow tinted glasses. I do recommend getting a pair that you're happy to wear for 24 hours because you are going to be wearing them for 24 hours, and try and figure out your fogging issues before getting to a milsim, because that would suck if you spend the entire time looking at the site like this. Yeah. So obviously this is some good kit for the height of summer maybe, but then you're not really camouflaged on the top. But in November it's cold and rainy, so I did need to supplement this with extra layers. Speaking of those, over the top of this I wore a Norgie and also a olive drab scrim scarf, which I really liked. Those together really sealed up my core area and kept the rain out and mainly on my face, which is where you really feel it. But the Norgie did its job, kept me nice and warm, in fact too warm at parts, so by Saturday afternoon I'd got a good sweat on, so the Norgie came off. Stayed at base camp until it started getting later into the evening and I started cooling down. It came back on and kept me nice and toasty throughout the rest of the weekend. Obviously the Norgie is very monotone, but I needed some camouflage and some better carrying capacity on top of that. So I chucked on my windproof DPM smock and my Deputy Dog hat. Now admittedly my dog hat is a bit small, but it stayed on my head all weekend, kept my head nice and toasty and kept the rain mostly off. I kept it up most of the time, but when it really did start hammering it down, I did flip it down, do it up under my chin, and had a nice toasty warm head. Still a nice wet cold face, but toasty warm head nonetheless. Now let's run through what I had in the pockets of my smock. So first things first, what would normally be your compass pouch on your left arm, I used as my bandage pouch. So easy access for me or for any player coming to medic me. Grab my white bandage out, tie me up, send me back into the fight. Now moving across to my right breast pocket, this was my emergency tool supplies, so in here I had my Leatherman case with my Leatherman and also my S80 multi-tool. That was there so I could, open screws and basically have a knife and some pliers on me as needed. Also, Muggins forgot to take this for the B-roll shoot. I also had my head torch in there so I knew where it was when it got dark. Now this head torch, although it does have 2-second white light, most importantly has red light, which is invaluable because your night vision doesn't get ruined by red light. Now moving over to my left side, this was what I called my admin pouch or my team leader pouch, because this was all the stuff I needed to carry out the role of TL. So first things first, I had a compass in here tied on to the button so I didn't lose it. Admittedly I didn't use the compass, but it's a very valuable bit of kit, and at a bigger site I would definitely have the compass. I also had my Right in the Rain knockoff notepad, a couple of mechanical pencils, and a Sharpie in there. Now the Sharpie's not the best for the write in the rain, but it's really good for writing on the little map I printed and laminated. So A5 size, big enough for me to nav from, big enough for me to read grid cores from, and big enough for me to put key points on it in the Sharpie, i.e. Locations of objectives, enemy encampments, key features, and be able to nav and report back positions to base from. And that was all that should have been in there, but there is more coming, which I'll explain later. Now, in terms of important stuff being carried in clothes, that pretty much covers it. Apart from in my trouser pocket, I was carrying my intel gathering device. This may look like a smartphone, but it is not. It is a secure network camera system. I could take pictures of enemy positions, VIPs that I may or may not have captured, important geographical landmarks that we may need to use for intelligence, and send them over a secure network, definitely not a WhatsApp chat, back to the HQ and to the other team leaders to use and disseminate that knowledge. Also, it handily doubles as my smartphone, so if there was a major emergency, I could call emergency services and get help as quickly as possible. And finally, carried in my smock pocket was my emergency / victory Kit Kat. Yes, Independence Day, they had the cigars they smoked. I had my Kit Kat that I chow down on. Now, this kit is all well and good, but I can't carry the stuff I needed to fight with that. So for that, I use my DPM PLCE. PLCE stands for Personal Load Carrying Equipment. Yes, it does look a bit lopsided, but that's how it fits comfortably on me, and I didn't have any issues with it, and the weight felt evenly distributed, so I'm not going to complain about that. Let's have a look at the pouches on it. So to start off, at the front we have 4 magazine pouches. Now, I could carry as an infantryman up to 300 rounds loaded real steel into mid-caps, so by my maths a Stanag mag holds 30 rounds, so that's 10 mags. I decided to run slightly less than that. I think I ended up running 9 or 8, so let's run through it. The front left pouch, I had 3 Simon mid-caps, all loaded to around 30 rounds. Behind that we had 2 more of those, so that's 5 mags with a smoke grenade. Now, the reason I did that was because I felt the smoke grenades would be the most important things from a team leader's point of view for either covering an objective or popping it so we can retreat from it. My offensive grenades weren't even on my carry rig, they were in my backpack, which we'll get to in a bit. So that's 5 mags on the left. And on the right hand side we have 2 mags in the front pouch and 2 mags in the rear pouch, so that's 9 mags in total carried, and another smoke grenade, so that's both my defensive smoke grenades carried on my belt rig. Now, admittedly I'm showing my 4 battle axe mags here. In reality, I lent those to Scott because they fed well in the support gun. I didn't even get onto this side of mags. The most I used was 3 or 4 mags before falling back to a respawn point and re-bombing from our field back. So really I could have probably got away with just having 5 mags on me on one side. Admittedly, it was quite a small combat area and not far to go to regen packs, so I think that might have played into only using 3, 4 or 5 mags. In a large game I would definitely want to have as many mags as I can carry on me. So that's enough talking about the mags. What else do we have? On the front I have my high power in its 58 pattern holster, and I literally had that as a joke because officers should carry pistols. In fact, the only use it saw was I gave it to Russell because his battery ran out on his gun as we walked back to our fob, so he carried it back to our fob, gave it back to me, switched out battery, got back in the field. That was it. That's proper fighting kit. What did I have on the back? Well, I've got 4 utility pouches, and in either side I carried 58 pattern water bottles, and I carried 1 mug with me, and admittedly I could have carried both mugs, but I carried one with me, kept one in the tent just in case. So that was 2 litres water on me. I found it pretty easy to get out the left one and drink from it as needed. The right one, a bit harder, A, because I've got a rifle, and B, because I'm left-handed and it's a bit fiddly with my right hand. And then the rest of these pouches were again for carrying cooking equipment. So on the left middle pouch I carried 2 tins, and I wrapped them in fabric to stop them rattling and make them a bit quieter to carry. Also that fabric acted as a bit of a cloth for cleaning them as needed. And also in that I carried a Hexi burner, didn't use it, and it was purely there as a backup in case the next item we'll have a look at failed. And that item was carried in the right middle pouch, and that was a Coleman gas burner. Other brands are available, and I'm quite tempted to get a jet boil instead. But very simple, you've got your can of gas and you've got your cooking head. Screw your cooking head onto your can of gas, turn the gas on, hit the piezo igniter, and you have fire. And you can put your tin and some water on it and boil that away and either make a brew with it or cook a rat pack in it, or both. So that was quite nice to carry on me, not because I was planning on using it out in the game zone, but so if I came back to the fob and was on stag, I could very quickly get it out, get my burner set up and make a brew while on stag. Now finally, moving around, we have a space between my left two ammo pouches and my water bottle pouch, and that was filled with my scabbard and my Airsoft safe bayonet, which I did actually use. Almost bayoneted a Russian, then realised there were a couple more Russians with him, and instead went for the tappy method as opposed to the stabby, because I'd have probably stabby one and then been tappy myself. So yeah, still got a bit of use, and it also had a real scabbard on it with a real tool set on it, so if I needed to I could have cut down a tree or sharpened a blade, which neither happened, but still it was on the kit. Brick kit, might as well have brick bayonet on it. And finally, there is a space next to that which originally had my radio, which is Balfang UB5R, clipped onto it. Unfortunately the clip failed, so as we can see in this video, I've set it up in my later use with the radio tucked into the admin pocket of my smock. Yes, it did get very crowded and a bit annoying, but I had to make do, keep my comms going, because as a team leader it was critical to have comms to the other units. And then I had my whip antenna tucked up and under my PLC yoke strap, so it was a bit more of a conformal antenna and didn't flap around in my face like so and knock my glasses off, because that would have been bad. And then obviously hooked up to the radio, I had my push to talk button, which was set up on my left yoke strap, which meant I could reach up with my left hand and push it and talk as needed. And finally, coming off the push to talk was my, I think, Z-Tac Bowman clone, so that's a single earpiece on the left hand side and mic coming out from the earpiece. The reason it's on the left is so when you're shooting your SA-80, which is a right-handed gun, your right side of your face can lean against the rifle and not push a mic around and stuff and be moving an earpiece around, which would be really annoying. So for the most part, that comm setup worked pretty well for me, other than I kind of needed to dual net with a single radio, which I kind of did. So I could easily listen to two nets, those two nets being the command net, which had the other team leaders and the HQ on, and the local net, which was for the militia team that I was leading. But talking on both nets was a bit of a pain, because I had to unlock the radio and then switch between the nets, and that was a bit of a pain to do. And if you push the wrong button, it doesn't do it, and if you push the wrong button, you can change the frequency by accident. If you push the wrong button, you could switch on your FM radio receiver and be listening to Star Radio or Sam FM, I don't know. It didn't work all the time, but I made do with it. I've definitely learned that in the future, if I'm going to dual net and be a team leader, I probably need to have two radios. And I think that about covers it for the load bearing equipment. Other than obviously, I need to carry my non-fighting gear with me. So let's have a look at my day sack. Now I've had this day sack for many years. This was actually one I got when I was in cadets many moons ago. But let's go through what I carried out on the field with me. So in the top pouch, I had both spare batteries for things like torches, radios, I guess, and weapon lights and sights and stuff. They were all carried with me in a waterproof bag, so we could keep things going, and also a first aid kit, so I could keep people going. Now, really the only things I'm qualified to do out there is maybe plaster, alcohol white, ibuprofen, paracetamol, hay fever tablets. The rest of it I carried because it was useful to have, and if there were more qualified first aiders there, which there were, and they needed it, that was there ready for them to use. Very good addition, not very much money. I recommend having it just in case. And now let's go through the three bottom outside pouches. So on one of them I carried my Odin speed loader and another speed loader, The Odin was very useful as most of us were running Stanag mags and most of us are running 2H, so we could throw the speed loader about and load all of our kit back up off of that speed loader. Obviously I carried the other speed loader for the more unique guns such as the Sterling or the high power that was on me. Not that I ever needed to reload it. Then in the middle pouch I carried quick snacks and drinks off of a rat pack. So most of the rat pack actually stayed in our camp, but the drinks and stuff I carried with me because it meant that if I was on stag and wanted a quick brew, I didn't have to go back to the camp area, I could just pull out on my day sack. And then finally on the other side I carried my 2 offensive grenades. So the rules were each player is only allowed to carry a maximum of 2 offensive and 2 defensive grenades on their person while playing, and so my 2 offensive were carried in the bag, my 2 defensive were on my belt in the form of the 2 white smokes. Now the idea behind this, it seems a bit weird, like why would you put your offensive in your bag where it's hard to get to? It's because I was playing the team leader role, so in my opinion I shouldn't be the one running up to a bunker saying throwing a grenade through it. But at the same time I also wanted those grenades on me in case someone in my team needed them. Having them in my backpack meant that someone could run up to me, go into that pouch, grab an offensive and go. And meant it was still easy access and I didn't have to go further into the bag to get it. Now, speaking of going further into the bag, let's dive on in and see what I actually carried on me. And that was mainly a bottle of gas, a waterproof bag with spare AEG batteries in because I wanted to keep the rifles going as much as possible in the field. Means we could just fall back to a respawn pack and quickly switch those batteries out as opposed to going all the way back to the fob. And then finally I had a waterproof bag with all my spare pyro in, so it meant if I went back to a regen pack and I'd use some of my offensive or defensive smokes, I could switch them out quite quick and easy from that bag. And that pretty much covers my my load bearing kit. The only thing left is obviously the weapon I used. So I was running my L85. Admittedly, not your everyday L85. This is my prototype EK3M design, so the most up-to-date British rifle bar the paint scheme, but don't worry, I had a backstory as to why I had an A3 that was black and I was a civvy. Basically I raided it from the H&K factory before they finished making it proper. That was my primary rifle. If that went down, I did have a smorgasbord of other rifles with me I could have used. Now admittedly, if you're looking to do a milsim, I wouldn't recommend taking, 5 rifles with you. I'd recommend taking 2 at max, your primary and a backup. The reason I have 5 is, well, there's a couple of reasons, so let's just quickly run through it and why I have all these with me. So let's go tallest to shortest. The M16, I have a review on this if you want to check it out. This went because Alice and I needed a spare between us at least. This also takes Stanag, so if either of ours went down we could quickly swap to this. I also lent this to Tom because he was coming down on public transport and RIFs and public transport don't always mix, and I was going by car and had space. So this came down, went to Tom primarily, but if either of our guns went down we could take this off him and rock this for the rest of the milsim. The LSW came with us because Scott used it as our support gunner of the section, and by all accounts he absolutely rocked with it. Highly recommend having a support gun in your section. Highly recommend having multiple support guns in your section because they really do make a difference in milsim, especially when these are limited to 30 rounds a mag. This is limited to however many rounds you can fit in a mid cap, which was like 120 or 180, so you could keep the fire going with that. We also took my Sterling. In a worst case situation that both Alice and my primaries went down, one of us could have the M16, one of us could have the Sterling. Realistically, we probably could have got away with just taking one, and in fact neither of our primaries really went down. But nonetheless, I've been asked to take this because Russ wanted to have a go with it, and he did, and he rocked it, and I'm pretty sure he slotted some Russians with it, so all good there. And finally, Alice's primary that went, the G&G L85 AFV, by all accounts the meanest littlest gun on the planet, and probably accounted for most of the Russian deaths that weekend. So that pretty much covers the fighting kit that I took to Descent. Obviously I was catering for a couple more people when it came to RIFs, and also actually some of the stuff I was carrying on my rig. But to be fair, the kit I carried on my person you would need nonetheless if it was either you or you and another person. So I don't think I would change much if I was going on my own. But what would you do? What do you think of the kit? Was it a sensible choice? Or would you leave things behind? Or would you take some more things on your person when you go into a simulated battle? Please do let me know in the comments below, actually. I'd like to hear your opinions on this one. So, thank you all very much for listening, if of course you're still here. I'm going to try and keep the videos coming at a pace. I feel like I've got out of my slump. Maybe as the sun starts setting earlier and there's less daylight, I feel more awake. Am I a vampire?
If any vampires find out about this, then it...
And on that bombshell, thank you all for watching. Stay safe, and I will hopefully see you soon. I can't reach the camera from here. No!